check off that you filed an extension.
Let's call this special meeting Tuesday, May the 13th, 2014, 5:30 p.m. to order. We'll ask Superintendent Voce to lead us in prayer. And Ms. Dysart, would you lead us in the pledge after that?
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening asking for your guidance as we make decisions, wanting to do that which is in the best interest of our children and this community. Give us the wisdom and the foresight to prepare for any obstacles that may come our way, and help us prepare programs that truly help move our students forward. These things we pray in your name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent Voce, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Acevedo? Here. Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mrs. DeFatta? Here. Mr. Egan? Here. Mr. England is not with us. Mrs. Dysart? Here. Dr. Kraft?
Here.
Mr. Egan? Well, it should be Dr. Lewis.
Yeah.
Is not with us this evening. Mr. Long?
Here.
Mr. Nikosha?
Here.
Mr. Warner?
Here. Okay, it's a point of personal privilege. I think due to the holidays and all, we missed out on some birthdays. Miss Lynette DeFatta, I believe you had one April the 18th.
Oh,
We wish you a happy
belated
birthday. Yeah. And Mr. Campbell, you're going to have one Thursday. So
Thursday.
we wish you a happy birthday. Oh, yeah, you'll make it with time to spare.
Happy birthday.
Also, we'd like to spotlight one of our teachers, Miss Michelle Abity. Miss Abity teaches at Joseph Davies School. She's working on her doctoral degree, and she's done research in the Common Core. And as a teacher of the year, we are proud of her accomplishments, and we wish her the best as she continues her doctoral studies. Miss Abity, congratulations. Item 4 is being withdrawn because of a glitch there, and we will take that up next month. So on this special meeting, the only item that we will cover is item 5 for the 2013-2014 pupil progression plan as amended.
Dr. Frank, excuse me, don't we
Yeah.
have to make a motion to take that off, to forward it to next month? Since it's an item that was published.
Do we need to do that?
We can go ahead and do that.
Let's go ahead.
Go
Just
ahead.
That
you move it.
that
We
item
move it to
that
next
lists
month.
the bids for Davies Elementary School parking lot.
And
rehabilitation.
we have a second
To
by
next month.
Mr. Warner. All vote on this. Your buttons, favor green, opposed red, no commitment orange.
Dr. Kraft?
Oh, but
Motion passes 9-0.
all right. So on item 5.
Hi,
Ms.
good
Harleton
evening.
and Ms. Lemetta.
Yeah.
Ms. Lemetta and I will be here to go over the revised pupil progression plan. We told you we'd be back, so here we are. I'm gonna go over the highlights of the 4th grade, and then Ms. Lemetta is gonna do the 8th grade because they're different. Okay, so basically they gave us some questions from the state, and we had to answer them. So our answers are in blue, and the questions are in black. So the first question is, how will we identify non-proficient students? At the 4th grade level, they will be those students who do not score the basic, approaching basic combination on the LEAP and or summer retest. That's children who are non-proficient. Okay? The next question is, of the students identified, who will be promoted and who will be retained? And it says, determine the criteria for the successful completion of summer remediation. So the main thing we have to understand here is children who do not meet the criteria on Friday have to attend summer skills. There's no debate about that. That is something they have to do. So they have to come to summer skills, and then they have to take the retest after summer skills has ended. So the successful completion of summer skills would be if the child performs satisfactorily in remediation, he meets the attendance requirements of summer remediation, and he shows growth from the beginning to the end of summer remediation. We're going to make up a condensed test to give them at the beginning and then at the end to see if they made progress in summer remediation. Then determine what criteria will be made to make promotional decisions. No promotional decisions can be made until after the LEAP tests come back in August. So after the LEAP test arrive, decisions for promotion will be made on an individual basis for students who still have not achieved the basic and approaching basic combination. Now, if a child gets a basic, if a child gets a basic, you can use the summer and the spring test to make a combination. Like they don't have to get the basic, approaching basic at the same time, but they can have a combination, but they have to have that combination, okay? The decisions will be made by the child's school administrators and myself for each individual child, and they will be made on an individual basis and will include the following decisions for promotion. First of all, a child who scores at the unsatisfactory level on both the spring and summer retake will be retained. Okay? A child who scores at least an approaching basic on either the ELA or the math component will be evaluated based on the criteria on an individual basis to determine if a waiver will be issued for the next school year only. And that will depend on successful completion of summer remediation, and then, more importantly, an analysis of the data for that child from the 2013 school year. And we will look at his report card grades from the 2013-2014 school year, his Lexile level, which is his reading level, his scores on Parish benchmarks and practice tests during the school year, his attendance, and his history of retention. So all those factors will be brought into play when we make decisions on an individual basis. Any questions so far? The next question is, convene the stakeholders to evaluate individual students based on the criteria and make a recommendation. The only person that can make the final determination is Ms. Voce, and after the principal and myself meet, or the administrators at the school and myself meet, I will then go to Ms. Voce with our recommendations on each child, and she will determine whether or not a waiver will be issued. Okay? What supports will you provide to students who are promoted and retained? Determine the supports to be provided to students who are promoted and retained. St. Bernard Parish will provide the following supports to students who do not meet the LEAP standards, that if they get the unsatisfactory and approaching basic combination, or the approaching basic and the approaching basic combination, and we determine that we're issuing a waiver for next year, we have to provide supports to that child in 5th grade, okay? And the first support would be students will be given a preference to be placed in a class with a teacher who has accomplished final evaluation of effective, proficient, or highly effective. Routine meetings will be held with the teacher, counselor, instructional coach, and/or school administrator to monitor progress. And computer-based instruction and/or interventions and tutoring will be provided in the area in which the child failed during the child's cultural arts time during the 2014-2015 school year. And the last question is, develop a plan to reduce retention rates. We are certainly in favor of reducing retention rates, and we use day-to-day RTI meetings and to monitor student progress. But other strategies we will use would be a continuous focus on early literacy and staff development to ensure that teachers are prioritizing literacy, continuation of the Universal 4-Year-Old program, provision of instructional coaches at each school who provide teachers with strategies for differentiation and specific response to intervention plans, and continuous look at data to monitor students who are not progressing appropriately. Having data team meetings with the teachers and the instructional coach and the administrators at the school to determine what interventions have to be placed in, have to be in place for those children.
And let me just make a little comment about this and why this is a little bit different and why we have to amend this particular plan. Because this is an amendment to the plan that we all adopted at the beginning of this school year, last summer for this school year. With the move by the state to the more Common Core-like assessments. In other words, the assessments this year, the statewide assessments, are aligned to Common Core standards, which are more rigorous in nature. Next year, we will also have the PARC assessments, again, another step up, more rigorous in nature. And there was a feeling statewide that some of our students across the state who may not have necessarily gotten that foundation, and there may be some gaps in their learning because of the elevation of the standards. And in order to address that issue, at the promotional levels of 4th and 8th grade, they're asking us to take a look at the waiver process, and they're allowing us to look at children individually if they don't meet that promotional standard. In the past, if they didn't meet the promotional standard, then they could not progress from 4th to 5th, or they could not progress from 8th to 9th. Well, for this year, they're allowing us to look at these children and say, well, if you didn't quite meet the standard of that basic and approaching basic combination, then we're going to allow local school systems to look at that child individually, look at their grades during the course of the year, look at their reading levels, look at their benchmark assessments, look at different individual criteria that we know about the child, with the caveat that they must attend summer remediation, there is no choice there, and they must take the retest. But we can look at all of these other factors, their attendance, their progress, their grades, and say, we think that this child can handle that 5th grade curriculum. So we're going to promote him or issue him a waiver for promotion and then provide supports for him in 5th grade because we think he can handle that next grade level. So this is all as a result of the more rigorous testing so that we don't catch some of these kids in the middle of the switch over to the new standards. So that's the reason we're doing this. So what we're saying is we're going to look individually at every child according to these criteria that Ms. Harleton and her committee of elementary people have looked at, and you're going to see in a minute Ms. Lametta and her group to see what specific items we will look at for each child so that we can make the best placement for him or for her for next year. So that's mainly the rationale for this.
I have a question, Dr. Clay.
Yeah.
Ms. Voce, how long is the remediation?
It's the month of June.
The entire month?
The entire month of June, and the retest for the 4th and 8th grade statewide assessments will be that last week in June. So we have to provide 50 hours of remediation. So it's set by the state, the number of hours of remediation prior to the test being taken. Now, we've already begun, and I'm sure Ms. Harleton can speak to that more eloquently, but in the child's regular day now, we're doing some bridge hours. So we're working with them right now as we wind down the school year with 4th graders. Well, we will be when we get the test results Friday and take a look at who will have to attend that summer remediation. We'll work with them the last 2 weeks of school to begin, and then throughout the month of June to help prepare them for that retest.
And they stay in class all day long during that month?
No, it
It's
goes from 8 to
8:15 to
1.
1:15 is
Okay,
is
so
not in
And
her
we
we
feed them
provide,
lunch.
we feed and provide
Breakfast and lunch.
We
transportation?
provide, right, transportation, breakfast, and lunch. So that's why, you know, when y'all approved the summer feeding program where Ms. Bloom opens up the cafeterias in the summer, she will do that at each of the summer school sites so that children will have lunch provided, there'll be breakfast when they arrive, and there is transportation as well.
Okay.
And where's the summer remediation?
For elementary, it'll be at Davies, for the middle school at Trist, and then for the high school at the 9th grade academy.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes,
Ms. Voce,
Mr. Warren.
are we going to get some numbers at our next meeting on how many students we're going to have in this program?
Well, we should know by the next meeting how many that will have to attend the summer remediation for 4th and 8th grade. We also supplement that too with summer skills program that we talk about children that they may not be in those promotional grades of 4th and 8th, but they have not attained the level that we feel to be promoted to the next grade. If they failed a particular subject or they need some intervention, so we will have other grade levels at the school as well. So it won't be just the 4th and 8th graders.
Thanks.
Okay.
Anything else on 4th grade?
Okay, thank you, Miss.
I think it's a good plan, and I think that we will look very carefully at these children to try to make the best decisions possible for each child. Okay?
You'll be using a holistic approach and not just one special point. Ms. Lametta, you're on.
Yes, good evening. Luckily, we didn't have as many questions to answer for 9th grade as 4th grade did, but I believe it's because really from the transition from 8th to 9th, the state has given us over the past more opportunities to move students into 9th grade. So in the beginning on the first page of our plan where it asks us to identify students who are non-proficient and students who will be eligible for the non-T or non-transition, just to give you a quick background of what that means. Typically right now students can move into 9th grade if they pass coursework and score approaching basic on 8th grade LEAP, they move into 9th grade, okay? What already exists in current state policy and in our current pupil progression policy is the AB waiver and the AB unwaiver, which I just restated for you on the first page. We're keeping those waivers in our current plan. And basically the AB waiver is a student who scores approaching basic on English and approaching basic on math, or a combination in the spring and summer, comes to remediation, meets attendance requirements, we can give them a waiver into 9th grade, and we do look at all the things that Ms. Harleton mentioned earlier. We look at the grades, we look at their age, we look at their retention history. We've been doing those things for the AB waiver all along. The state also offers a career diploma, where students who score AB on one and UN on the other, and even after summer remediation and summer retest still score UN on that one subject, we can put into 9th grade in the career diploma pathway. But basically those students had to be 15 years old during the coming 9th grade school year and had to at least have a 1.5 grade point average. So we have had some students who were going to be 15 during the school year but didn't make the 1.5 GPA. So what you see in the very last statement on page 1, we're adding to our plan now, because prior to now the state tied our hands. If you scored AB UN and never got that English or math up to UN after summer and were not going to be 15 during the school year and didn't have a 1.5 GPA, we could not promote you. You had to be retained in 8th grade. With this new policy, we're adding in on the bottom, if we have a student who's going to be 15 but doesn't have the 1.5, or the opposite, who has the 1.5 but won't be 15, we will look at that student to consider moving them on. So we're adding that piece into the plan that's already in place, okay? And then page 2 on our plan is basically saying that we'll meet after the summer scores come in again, and now we'll look at students who are un in both. So if you take the spring test and you're in English and in math, summer remediation, you do the retention requirements and you take it again and you're still on. If you've never been retained, you're a first-time 8th grader, no retentions, we're going to go ahead and retain your 8th grade again, because we feel like if you're on again, you're really not going to succeed in high school, okay? Now, if we have an overage student or a student who has an IEP, we'll look at those individually. Multiple retentions, because we do understand multiple retentions will reduce the chance of the student getting a diploma. So that's that second paragraph on there to say if you have been retained before, overaged, or if you have an IEP, we will look individually, and we may move those students into the 9T, which will be a separate grade now in the state system, and all that means is that student has an extra year to finish high school. They won't count in the cohort until the 5th year, so the state will give us 5 years to get that student a diploma. I will say, though, if they're overage, they're not going to stay with us 5 years. No. If they're already overage, they're not going to stay till they're 21. So we do the best we can to probably get them out in 3. They're not even going to stay for 4, really, if they're already 16. So we really try to get them out as quickly as we can. And on the bottom of that page I just listed, we look at report card grades, Lexile reading levels, scores on parish benchmarks, student attendance, history of retention, and age. Those are all things we'll consider for the students who we may move into the non-T program.
And Mary, can I say too, on the part where the we also have in my plan that I skipped on mine, that we will, if there are multiple retentions or an IEP that we have to look at, we will look at that also. But that's in my plan too.
And then the final page is, it asks us to describe our remediation program and asks us to ensure that the student will have exposure to ninth grade curriculum, ninth grade credits, and ensure them the best possibility of accumulating as many credits as possible. So basically here we just spell out that for anyone who is going to be in the non-T program, of course, we will address, we'll do 50 hours, as Ms. Boucher said. We'll address the grade level standards, but we'll also address any skill deficiencies they may have at the same time in the summer. We'll use some computer-assisted programs to help us do that. Now, students in the school year, we will give them a remedial math class and then do algebra the second semester. If they don't do well in English, we'll give them a remedial English class and then English 1 second semester, and the rest of their school day will be Carnegie unit credits. So we'll put them in high school credit classes for everything, but we'll give them a remedial class in English or math based on the need. So they will have a chance to earn as many credits as possible with the block system and get the remediation in addition to the classwork.
And just an aside that's not a direct, I guess, implication of this plan, we had talked with y'all at a previous meeting about the Jump Start proposals, which is the new career and technical education proposals. And I think for many of these students that are, the career tech or the Jump Start proposal is very good for all students, whether they are students that are academically inclined or non-academically inclined. It depends on what their interests are. But for these particular students that we're talking about here that are going to be affected with these waivers, the new career education plan, I think, is going to be a very, very valuable resource for them, because they will take a track where they will get their basic high school courses in algebra and geometry and English 1 and English 2 and U.S. history and biology, all of those basics, but then they will be able to concentrate on a vocational or career pathway that they may have more of an interest in rather than a college-bound pathway. So they may be, we have programs set up for welding, electrical work, HVAC. We have that partnership with Nunez Community College where we're working much more closely in providing those opportunities for those students. So by allowing these students who may have not quite met that promotional standard, but we feel has a readiness factor that they can move into high school, get their basic credits, and move into possibly a career pathway, I think is going to be extremely beneficial for these young people as well as the community at large, because then we'll be producing outcomes for students where the needs are and where the job opportunities are for them. So it'll all work hand in hand together.
Mr. Long?
Yes, well, it sounds as if the state has given the locals more leeway in the promotions, and the so-called social promotions of years ago, you know, I know that's gone because of LEAP and everything else, but it sounds like I said, we have some, we can waive a lot of things now that we couldn't do a couple of years back.
Right, while still maintaining the standards and the high standards that we have. This will help sometimes students with special needs who may not exactly test well all the time, but still can
Right.
perform at grade level or approaching grade level. It will help students that are not really interested in a more academic pathway to pursue something that they have an interest in and that they can get a job for. So giving us the flexibility to assess each student individually and helping them to make decisions for their own pathway, I think is extremely beneficial, because it's nothing, I guess, more detrimental to students if we're going to, if they're going to be multiply retained, and they're not even going to begin high school until the age of 16 or even more. Now, we have very few of those in our district, but we do get students who transfer in from other districts that are 16 and are just entering high school, which means they may be making 17 sometime during the year. They'll be 20 or approaching 21, and they're not they're not, let's face it, they're not going to want to stay in high school that long because they're going to move on with their lives. So if we can then manage that program for them and give them those opportunities earlier on, then I think we're meeting their needs, their family needs, and ultimately the needs of this community.
Well, in between I guess the ninth grade academy, which helps with dropout rate, and this program, it should help a great deal with the dropout rate,
I think so.
which is a good thing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Dyson.
Thank you, Ms. Halton and Ms. Lametta, and thank you, too, for serving on the committee for the new progression plan, pupil progression plan. It seems as though y'all have a very comprehensive plan here to meet the needs of all of the students so that they can meet with success. So as that is said, I would like to move that we accept the amendment to the student pupil progression plan at this time.
We have a motion, we have a second by Ms. Acevedo. We have some more discussion. Mr. Warner?
Thank you, Dr. Krapp. Yeah, it seems like a really good, solid plan. It gives us a good chance to get students from 4th and the 5th and 8th and the 9th. Are we going to track some of those ones that, we do send to the summer program and how effective our programs are on getting them, through LEAP or Common Core? Okay. And in 8th grade, when do we find out, when do the students or the parents find out that they move from 8th into high school? Because I know there's uniforms that they need to purchase and stuff like that. Are they given enough advance notice on that?
Well, the state test scores usually come in around August 6th, and then we get the scores as quickly as we can, and we do what this plan says we're going to do, is look through some things and make a decision on who we can move on. And Ms. Boche and I usually meet till almost midnight that night when they come in and get the schools a list by like 1 a.m., and then the counselors call home and say, look,
So I guess if they get promoted,
Yeah.
they're pretty happy to go buy that uniform, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we work as diligently as we can as soon as the schools come in.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies, Ms. Hobbs and Ms. Lametta. You've done a good job covering this, and I like the procedure when you look at the whole student and you determine their strengths and weaknesses, but also the important thing, what are they interested in when they leave school? And if we can give them a leg up on that, we're doing a valuable service to those students. And we thank you for your work, your dedication and commitment. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Vote your machines.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, do we entertain a motion to adjourn? Mr. Fata and Ms. Dyson, all in favor of adjourning? It's indicated by saying aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. We stand adjourned. See you in a few minutes for. Y'all need it. You want to move on into the 6 o'clock? Okay. Okay, we'll continue with the 6 o'clock meeting. What do we do on our agenda? Item 5. All right. We'll open this general committee meeting at 6 p.m., pretty close to that. So we'll ask Superintendent Boche to give us a prayer, and then we'll ask Mr. Egan to lead us in the pledge.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to gather together this evening and complete work that will benefit the children and citizens of St. Bernard. As we move into the final 2 weeks of school, we ask that you grant our teachers, students, and administrators just a few more days of energy, passion, and patience for teaching and learning. We look forward to graduating our seniors this week, Father, and we ask that you be with each of them as they leave us for that walk into their futures. Thank you for sending them into our lives. We have all been enriched by their presence. These things we pray in your name.
Amen. allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent Boche, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Acevedo? Here. Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mrs. DeFata?
Here.
Mr. Egan? Here. Mr. England is not with us. Mrs. Dysart?
Here.
Dr. Kraft? Dr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Long?
Here.
Mr. Nikosha?
Here.
Mr. Warner?
Okay. We'll move the agenda. Item 4 be chaired by Dr. Lewis.
Thank you, Dr. Kraft. Item 4, the annual review of the Guide to Student Conduct. We have Mr. Powell.
Good afternoon. Indeed, it's a pleasure to come before you to submit the recommendations and suggestions for the Guide to Student Conduct. I want to thank the committee members that served with me on this awesome task. The following recommendations, changes are being suggested. On page 10 of the Guide to Student Conduct, shirts or blouses are to be uniform type with no markings other than the school insignia. That's optional. And the committee is recommending the change to read, shirts or blouses are to be white uniform type with or without school insignia, or a school colored shirt must have the school insignia or the logo. We did that for the committee felt that it would kind of clarify that on page 10. Any questions on that?
Good question.
Mr. Long, you got it? Didn't see your hand.
Yeah, what was the reason you said they wanted to make that change?
They thought because they had a little problem with the word option.
Sure.
So what they tried to do is try to clarify. So therefore, you can have a white shirt with the insignia, but the school shirt must have the insignia on it.
The school shirt, okay.
Yes, the school colored
Right.
shirt.
If you have a Dolce red shirt, you can't just wear a red polo shirt.
Sure.
It has to have the
See, there was a misinterpretation by parents. It's not changing the intent of what we had, but since the word optional was behind it, they would just go by any color shirt that approximated the school color
Okay.
and didn't have the school insignia on it. So our basic uniform is a white shirt that you can buy anywhere. It doesn't have to have the name of the school or anything on it. But if you want the colored shirt, like Lacoste is red and white, or Goche,
Which is
then you have to have the school-sponsored shirt with the insignia on it.
Okay.
Okay, so you have your choice there. The white one can be either way, but the school-colored shirt has to have the school
Oh,
insignia.
okay. So parents would have a choice. That's good, because I was concerned about the cost
Right.
to some parents that may not be able to afford
Right.
to buy the shirt.
So they can buy a
through the
plain
school.
white collared shirt anywhere. And
That's
so
what they've
this
been
is
doing
really no
anyway.
change.
Right.
It's just a clarification because some people misread what that meant.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. On page 11, sandals, backless shoes, platform shoes, slippers, house shoes, Crocs, and boots above the ankles are not considered uniform wear. The committee wanted to add Heelys. Now, Heelys are the shoes with the wheels on,
yeah.
with the wheels on it.
Shoes with wheels.
With the wheels on
it. Yeah.
And light up shoes. So they want to add that to that. Questions, comments? Okay. On page 15, possession using a tobacco product, matches or light. The committee wanted to add electronic cigarettes or similar devices. Now that's the new thing, the electronic cigarettes. It's been all over the news media, et cetera, and thing. So we needed to add that. Okay. Questions or concerns on that?
Call Mark.
Is electronic cigarette the same thing as a vapor cigarette? Is it all the same?
Oh, yes, yes. That's
Okay, all right. Thank
And,
you.
Mr. Long?
has that been a problem? Did any of the teachers notice students
Not
bringing
yet,
this to
but we
school?
want to be proactive because it's in the law now. We want to be proactive.
Okay, so it hasn't been a problem yet?
No, it has not been a problem yet.
Okay, okay, thank you.
I'll make sure it doesn't.
Page 16. It's the same thing as I said. Possession using a tobacco product, matches or lighter. We want to add electronic cigarettes or similar devices. Page 19 would be the same. Same thing, electronic cigarettes or similar devices. And as we speak, the people out there coming up with all kinds of devices to trick our children.
Yes.
As I get something before you today, next year I may be coming before you talking about something else. That's how fast things are happening. And they're targeting our children. So we have to be proactive. Okay, page 19, same thing. Questions or comments on? Page 26. This is a bus rule. We needed to add that. Rules for following while waiting for and aboarding the school bus. The committee wanted to add to number 14, make number 14. Designated bus stops time is an estimate. The bus may arrive 10 minutes before or 10 minutes designated time. It's almost hard for the school bus or the superintendent to predict. So we're trying to give it an estimate of time. Comments, questions? Okay. Handout number 1. And that's prohibition against the use of tobacco in school. That's this handout. 2-page. For your indulgence, if you don't mind, I'll read it. In accordance with revised statute 17-240 of the 2011 Louisiana Legislature, St. Bernard Parish School Board shall prohibit students from the possession, chewing, smoking, and or other consumptions of any tobacco or tobacco products of any combustible plant material. The board shall also prohibit students to carry, use, have, possess, distribute, sell, give, or lend any tobacco products of any combustible plant material, cigars, cigarette, pipe, or any other smoking object, device, including electronic cigarettes or similar devices of any device or use of smoking in any form by students on the ground of any school, in any school building, any school facility, school board property, or on any school bus. The school board property shall include any portable building, field house, stadium, equipment storage area, school vehicle, vacant land of any property owned, operated, or leased by the board. Parents' permission to do any of the prohibited things mentioned above shall not exempt a student from this policy. Violation shall subject students to appropriate disciplinary action and outline in the board discipline guide to conduct, and the students may also be referred for cessation counseling.
Mr. Long?
Yeah, quick question. So this would include a football game?
Yes, part of our, any,
After hours?
well, as long as it's within school function or time. That could
Okay.
be on a field trip, bus ride, etc.
Okay. So even if it's at a football game after hours and a parent gives them permission, the student is still not allowed?
Right, according to this, no.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Comments, questions? Okay. Page 35, the McKinney-Vento homeless procedure. It's a change. Ms. Jackie Porter, coordinator, home liaison. She will be coordinator of that program, and we omitting Mr. Smith. Page 38. Various other federal statutes affecting educational record. Change myself, and we omitted Mr. Smith. Page 48. Equal opportunity provision. I will be in charge of Title IX, and we omitted Mr. Smith. Page 50, change of newly appointed personnel. Dr. Kraft is the president of the board. Ms. Diana Dysart is the vice president, and we're omitting Mr. Smith. Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I guess it's goes to show why we miss Mr. Smith so much. he was a big part of
correct
everything that went on.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Page 53, St. Bernard Parish School Board school calendar for 2013-2014 with 2014-2015. That would be the replacement. I submit those changes and recommendations for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Any questions from board members?
I'll make a motion to accept changes.
We have a motion by Ms. DeFatta, second by Dr. Kraft. Any further discussions? Please vote your machines.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Powell.
you.
Next item on the agenda, number 5, is the technology plan for 2014 through 2017. We have Mr. Brown with us this evening.
Good evening, board members. It seems like just a few short months ago I was before you with a technology plan, and I was, January. And since that time, the state has issued new guidelines and a new template for the 2014-2017 span of time. So what you have before you is a copy of what we are proposing. And if you will, I'll begin on page 4 because that's really where the meat of the material begins. And you'll notice that this is a very short document as compared to the 40-something page that I brought to you before. And that is, one of the main reasons for that is because we no longer have Title II-D monies. So all of those specifications and requirements for a tech plan that revolved around Title II-D has been removed. And basically, essentially what you're left with is a technology plan that would satisfy E-rate, because E-rate does require school districts to have a technology plan if they are going to apply for Priority 2 services. And next year that may change to go back to what it originally was if you are applying for E-rate at all. That remains to be seen. But anyway, so basically what you have is a plan that would satisfy E-rate, essentially. The very beginning is basically a needs assessment. Basically, the committees that have met throughout the year have determined that those items are the things that we would like to focus on in the next 3 years, that being expanded access and use of online assessment delivery. You know, with Park being right around the corner, we would like to expand and the opportunities for students to be exposed to online testing. Hardware replacement cycle. You know, as we move forward away from Katrina, our machines are getting older and older, so we would like to begin to investigate a process by which we can systematically change devices over time so that we can keep up with the new technologies. Ongoing and training and support for optimal integration of technology in the classroom, and then to ensure that technology tools and resources are maintained and used continuously and seamlessly for instruction, collaboration, and assessment. So underneath that, what you have are basically 4 goals, and those 4 goals mirror the National Educational Technology Plan, and basically we've taken those 4 goals and fit them into our school district. So these were modeled after the national plan. The first goal is to provide technology-enriched learning environments that engage and empower students to become lifelong learners in a globally networked society. And so what we've addressed there is the strategies we've addressed there. We'd like to keep up with our active boards, so on and so forth. Our second goal is to leverage the power of technology to assess learning outcomes and use assessment data for ongoing improvement. You know, that's one of the crucial pieces to our school improvement week is not just state testing data, but throughout the year, the benchmark assessment data that we collect. All of that is done through a software package that we train our teachers on. So we want to continue that process because data-driven improvement is essential if we're going to make strides in the right direction. So we want to continue to support that, those opportunities, especially as PARC becomes more and more important to us. Goal number 3 is to support educators with technology that connects them to data, content, resources, and learning experiences. So basically we're saying we want to continue to maintain the 5 computers in every classroom with a networked printer. We want to continue to provide laptops for every educator and administrator. We want to continue those things. And number 4, to provide students and educators with access to a comprehensive technology infrastructure for teaching, learning, and communicating. And basically what those strategies address is we want to continue as the years progress to monitor our network, our bandwidth consumption, so that we can provide students and teachers with access to broadband connections. And then our professional development strategy, which is required by E-rate. Basically our goal is to have educators and administrators participate in effective professional development to ensure that the technology and other educational resources available in schools are being used to enhance student learning. And therefore, we would ask that all educators and administrators regularly participate in leadership professional development that's offered by the district or by other recognized authorities in the area of instructional technology. So that includes not just like Eureka Math Online, but it also means administrative technology, such as the human capital system that we utilize for evaluations of employees. And then all administrators and leaders will routinely model the appropriate use of technology resources to support administrative tasks and instructional functions. And that all administrators and leaders and educators will use a variety of emerging technologies such as email, learning management systems, and online assessments. And then on page 6, you basically have a timeline of our evaluation and monitoring techniques and when those things occur. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
No, sir. Oh, Ms. Lang, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Sure.
As far as the professional development goes, about how many hours in our teacher in service do we have for teachers per year? I know in the beginning of the school year that we have professional development, some of it's technology, and then throughout the year we also have some additional. So about
It's hard to put an hourly time on that, because what happens is it depends upon, it's very specific and individualized for the school. And it depends on what their needs are. Some schools need extra additional training with EduSoft, and some schools are taking off with it. So it's really hard to put a value on that, a number value on that. But yes, in the beginning of the school year, we do provide district-wide training. New teachers get oriented. Part of their new teacher training is 3 days of technology training. And then throughout the school year, like for example, next year we'll be rolling out the upgraded version to the gradebook system. It's same function, but it has a different look to it. So we'll spend the first week or 2 of school training teachers on the new look and feel of the new product. And if we switch over to a new educational assessment package, we'll be doing the same thing. So it happens during their school day. It's job embedded. But it depends on, once we get past what a district initiatives are, it becomes school specific.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? Ms. DeFada?
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Just one question, Mr. Brown, out of curiosity.
Sure.
The technology plan, I know we all immediately think of the computer systems and the laptops and all.
Right.
The Prometheum/smart boards that we have, is that included in this, or?
Correct, and that falls under goal number 1. And if
Okay.
you look at the second bullet under goal number 1, to maintain active boards and other interactive classroom technologies.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to clarify and make sure, also for the public, that they knew that all of these
Absolutely.
new systems are included.
Absolutely.
And in that hardware replacement cycle, is that strictly with the computer systems, or are there new innovations coming with the smart boards that would, or Prometheum boards, whichever, that we would look at to add to it, or is that all going to be strictly through the computer systems?
It includes both.
It includes
It
both?
includes both.
Okay.
That's correct. That's
Great.
correct. And I'll also will also draw your attention to the third bullet under goal number 1, to continue to support the implementation of mobile computing devices for use with classroom instructions. As funds become available, right now the trend is to make our way towards providing every student with a computing device. And we make strides in that as funding becomes available. So we want to continue to support that as long as we have the infrastructure to do so.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Mr. Warner?
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. The following priorities need to be addressed: hardware replacement cycle.
Yes.
We need to be kept abreast of that one, if in case we have to come up with some more money to buy some more hardware and stuff like that. So keep us in the loop on that one if you can.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
I'll move we send it to the full board. Dr. Lewis?
We have a motion by Ms. DeFatta, second by Ms. Dysart. Any further discussion? Please vote your machines.
Motion passes 10-0.
Item 6 is an executive item. We have Mr. Long.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lewis.
You're welcome.
Okay, item 6, personnel changes for May 2014, and we have Mr. Granberry with us.
We have a few of them.
Yeah, you've been busy, Mr. Granberry.
Oh, yeah. It's a busy time of the year.
And I know you had a transfer day recently and also a job
We had
fair.
a
right?
transfer day in March and then a job fair 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
So as of right now, most of the positions for the coming school year are filled?
Most of them, you know, but we have days like today where I got 5 resignations, you know, so it's,
Wow.
you know, you win a little, lose a little, you know, win a little, lose a little, you know, so, yeah, so we're still looking for some people, but no, most of our positions are filled.
Okay. Mr. Fowler, you have a question?
Just to comment on underneath our new appointments, Ms. Anthony, Ms. Nicole Anthony will be joining us this coming school year as I think a 3rd grade teacher at Goche, I believe, is
Goche.
what I heard. And I know Ms. Anthony, I currently work with her now, and she's going to be a very good asset to our school system coming in. And I want to welcome all of our new hirees, but I want to welcome Nicole also.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, this is for informational purposes
Right,
only right
so-
now. Okay, we'll move on to the next item if there's no questions. And
Well,
you're going to handle this also, Mr. Granberry?
Yes,
Item
yes, sir.
7, 2014, 2015 personnel appointments.
Well, that is everybody employed by our school district, a list of everyone that's employed by our school district for the 2014-2015 school year. So,
Okay. Sounds good. Any questions?
yeah, as of the time we print it. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have some changes and highlights for that.
And we'll have some changes and highlights for the next, you know.
Okay. We will need a motion for this.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Fatter, seconded by Dr. Lewis. Any other discussion? Okay, please vote your machines. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold up.
I think this is for informational purposes.
Yeah.
Oh, is it also?
Personnel
Okay.
appointments, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Even with the administrative staff on there, Ms. Wilczek? Well, that's a touchy area.
Would it hurt if we put
Yeah, the administrators we've renewed, the other ones have 2-year contracts.
Right.
You're right, Dr. Lewis, thank you very much for that clarification. We did renew the other administrative contracts at our February or March meeting.
Yeah, we did that already.
So
yeah.
all of these people are already in place who are administrative in nature, and the other ones are teacher appointments.
Anyone on a performance contract, you have to renew their performance contract
Right.
like 90 days prior to the end of the school year. So we did that, I think it was in February.
So maybe one day the legislature will clarify this
Maybe one day
one
we'll get really
one way or
good
the other.
clarifications, and they'll stop going back and forth.
Right.
with all these acts in the legislature, but we can only hope.
Right.
We can
Okay,
only
so
hope.
we won't take any action on this
I think
tonight.
this is just
Okay.
informational.
Okay.
All right, we're going to let you take action now.
Okay, moving on. Item 8 is the personnel evaluation plan.
Yes, and there's no changes for recommendations for next year, so it's going to stay the
Okay.
same. Unless the legislature,
Once
in
we
its
see
wisdom,
the outcome of this legislative session, if there is a need for change, then we'll bring it to you.
Okay, motion by Mr. Warner, second by Mr. Nicosia. Any discussion, questions? Please vote your machines.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay. Okay, one more, Mr. Granberry.
One more.
Item 9, permission to mail letters of assurance. And this is something we do every year.
every year.
Motion by Dr. Lewis, seconded by Ms. Dysart. Any discussion? Okay, please vote your machines.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Granberry. Okay. Turn it over to Mr. Fatter.
Thank you,
Finance.
Mr. Long. Okay, first we have the 2014-2015 General Fund and Special Revenue Funds budgets. Mr. Fernandez, good evening.
Good evening.
You are on, Mr. Fernandez.
Well, thank you so much. Okay, in your packets is our proposed 2014-2015 General Fund and Special Revenue Funds budgets. I apologize that we weren't able to get it in the mail out, but here we are now. There's several exhibits. The first 4 exhibits relate to the general fund budget. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first is a summary of what we're projecting for revenues and expenditures and beginning and ending fund balances. 2 looks at summary of employee benefits. 3 and 4 are details of revenues and expenditures. And basically, this is a pretty straightforward budget. What we're looking at is funding our staffing for 2014-2015 as has been established by the schools. We funded all those positions. There have been some increases in benefits, as you see in 2. There's been an increase in the retirement rate, an increase in we're anticipating an increase in group insurance, so we built that into the budget. And the budget also reflects the proposed MFP that was presented to the legislature for 2014-2015. You may have seen that in the news. They're still making some adjustments to it as per the legislature, but this was the original proposed MFP with 2014-2015 allocations, and also what was predicted to be or is anticipated to be the transfers out to other agencies for 2014-2015. So overall, we have a balanced budget, I'm happy to announce. And we're anticipating to have a slight growth in our fund balance by the end of the year. The only other thing, well, that's the general fund. I'll be happy to answer any questions. So have you look at it. The lunch fund budget and the special revenue fund budgets are Exhibits 5 and 6. The lunch fund budget, again, accounts for the staffing of the lunch fund. Some
Keep the extra conversations outside, please, where we can pay attention to Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, sir. We have slight increase in salaries and benefits, and as well as food costs. As you've heard Ms. Bloom talk in the past, food costs is increasing because of the menu pattern changes, meal pattern changes. We're expecting a slight increase in federal reimbursement revenues due to a very small increase in reimbursement rates. And we're also expecting an increase in local revenues. As you know, at the last board meeting, y'all took action to increase slightly lunch prices. So we're also reflecting that in this budget. And the last exhibit, number 6, is for the special revenue funds, which reflects our budget amounts for 2014-2015. We had some small increases in funding due to the fact that the federal government went back and attempted to refund some of the money that we lost due to sequestration this year. But that reflects the monies that we're anticipating getting in the various federal and state grants that we have. And that's basically what we're presenting to you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Long.
So basically, Mr. Fernandez, depending on what MFP formula finally is approved through Bessie and the legislature, you may have to come back and make adjustments.
Yes, what we plan to do, like we did last year, as you know, last year there was uncertainty in the MFP at the time we were adopting the budget, which we do always in May. And what we're going to do is adopt it at this current time with the projections they had. If there are any changes, and we're not anticipating any great changes to us, we might have some slight increases or decreases in different areas. It won't be a significant change, but when we come back after the beginning of the year in the fall with our first revised budget, we'll adjust the totals to reflect what the actual MFP numbers come out to be. But we need to adopt something now to have in place for the beginning of the year.
Right.
But like I said, even the recommended changes that they're sending back to the legislature aren't going to affect us very greatly.
Right, okay. Hey, thank you.
Thomas Long. Anyone else? Any questions? Dr. Kraft?
Yeah, Mr. Fernandez, on page 1 there, the transfers to other educational agencies.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry?
Shed a little light on that $135,000.
Yes, sir. In the MFP, in the proposed MFP, as you know, in the 2013-2014 MFP, we had transfers to other education agency, basically charter schools, that are educating students that live in St. Bernard Parish. We are required to transfer the pupil amount of local funds to those schools to fund the education of these students that live in St. Bernard Parish but travel to other schools outside of the parish for their education. In the proposal for the 2014-2015, in addition to the Type 2 charter schools that have previously existed in the MFP, they've added schools that are state-run, such as NOCA, the School for Science and Math, the Special School District, and the School for the Deaf and the Visually Impaired. So it increased a little bit because they added those schools into the mix. Now, one of the recommendations that they're sending back to the legislature is going to remove those schools, but we'll still have to send the contributions to the Type 2 charter schools that previously existed. Currently, we have about 34 students that are attending these schools.
Okay, so that's local funds generated by taxpayers of St. Bernard.
Yes, sir. The state funds are sent directly to...
MLP, they hold out what we'd ordinarily get at the state level. in addition to this.
Correct. The total, if you had the state and local shares for these students, is about $324,000. The local share that's represented is $139,309.
That 300 and something thousand is money is less than what we'd have available to educate St. Bernard Parish students, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to make clarification. Thank you very much, Mr. Fernandez.
You're welcome.
That's all, Dr. Kraft. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Warner.
On the lunch fund,
Yes, sir.
the projected for 2014-15,
Yes, sir.
the local contribution increase, the state contribution doesn't increase. Only the feds match that? Is that how that works?
Well, the state is MFP money that is dedicated to the lunch fund or given to the lunch fund. When the new MFP was adopted in around 1990, in that range, school districts are required to contribute the amount that was given to the MFP at that point in time, required by the state. And every year required to do a local transfer of our MFP monies to the lunch fund. Now that amounts to, today, about $50,000 or $60,000 we're required to give to the lunch fund of the MFP money. We supplement that with additional monies in order to make the lunch fund
Solvent.
Solvent, yes, thank you. So we have to, the local districts have to contribute, and we contribute $615,650 to fund the lunch fund, because as we discussed, as Ms. Bloom has discussed in the past, the amount of monies we get in reimbursements and even in food collections from paying students doesn't cover all the costs of lunch fund. We have to help them out a little bit every year. But that has remained the same for the past several years.
Actually, just way back, before Mr. Fernandez.
Before my time.
It was way back. When Edmund Edwards was governor.
Way
many
back.
moons ago, there used to be a state contribution to the lunch fund, at which point we were able to do many, many, many things with it. We, were able to employ a greater number of people, there were more choices of foods and such. And when the state got in one of their budget crises way back when, the legislature eliminated that state subsidy totally. So there is no state contribution to the lunch fund. Then they came up with, the state, there has to be some type of maintenance of effort and what they called some matching funds. So they came up with this figure at the time. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not on. They came up with this figure at the time to say, they went through and said the minimum contribution each district had to put into the lunch fund from their MFP monies, like Mr. Fernandez was describing. And our contribution of what we have to put up is about $55,000. But we can't maintain the lunch fund on what we have. So we increased it to that figure, which has remained constant for many years, and we've been trying to do economies of scale in terms of ordering, in terms of personnel and such, but realizing, as Ms. Bloom has told us, the cost per plate to put a plate on the table, including labor costs, because the benefits are so high as well, is almost $4. I think it was $3.80 something. Is that about right, Mr. Fernandez? So when that paying child pays $1.25 for lunch at the elementary level, it's really costing $3.80 some odd cents to put the plate on the table. So we know that we run a deficit to even start with. And I tell you, we've been doing, I think, a tremendous job in monitoring that this is all we have to do to put up from a local perspective to make the lunch fund solvent.
Okay, thank you.
That's all, Ms. Warner. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we need a motion.
Also move that we accept the budget.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Dysart, seconded by Mr. Warner. There's no further discussion. Please vote your machine.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for
Thank
your
you.
presentation. We move on to item 11, a resolution adopting the 2014 millage rates. Oh, look, it's Mr. Fernandez again.
Oh. Look at that stick around. Okay, this is the adoption of millage rates that are applied to the properties in parish to receive our ad valorem taxes every year. We're required to do that annually. We have to have it to the assessor by June 1st, so that's why we usually do it in May. There's a resolution attached. We are requesting that we levy our regular millages for operational and constitutional millages, total of 35 mills for those, and we are seeing the debt service millage. Again, as you recall, last year we did not levy this debt service millage because we had sufficient funds in our debt service accounts to service the debt for the past year, for this current year. Well, now we are getting to the point where we need to supplement that to service future debt. So what we're doing is, instead of our normal 10 mills that we've assessed in the past, we're assessing 5.5 mills to meet our debt service obligations for the next year. So we are going to have a total of 40.5 mills assessed for school system operations and debt service. And we are asking that you pass or approve this resolution to be sent to the assessor and applied to the tax rolls. And when you vote on this, it requires a voice vote.
Okay. And Mr. Fernandez, just for the viewing public, if you will go over that these are, some are required by law that we put these on, and these are renewals, these are not increases.
Right. This is the same, for the operational millage and constitutional millage, they're at the same rates that we adopted last year and for the previous years. And that's the money's used to operate the school system. The debt service is required by the covenant that was voted on when the voters approved the bond issues for those projects, construction projects at the time and other projects at the time. And we're required to levy a millage sufficient to service the debt for that particular time period. So for the next year, the debt service for the next year, 5.5 mills will give us sufficient funds to service that debt for that time period.
Okay. Thank you. I just want the public to make sure that they understood that these are not new millages.
No, they're
that
not
these are
new
just renewals
millages,
of
and
what's
they're not
been-
increased. They're the same levels. The only difference is we're assessing the debt service millage after not levying anything last year, due
Right.
to the fact that we had some funds and could give the taxpayers some relief.
Right, because last year, we had enough money in reserves to pay down the debt that we needed to. We were required to,
ma'am.
so we gave the public a break on that. And
Yes.
now, even coming in at 5.5 mils,
Right.
it's still less than what the normal was. And
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think I recall you last year saying that we're progressively paying that debt service down. Pretty soon, we'll be able to
Yes.
get rid of it
We have
altogether.
approximately 3 more years before the debt service is finally done. Our
Paid
last
out.
payment is in 2018.
Oh, that's wonderful. I like hearing paying things off. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Hernandez or comments? Mr. Campbell?
We send this to the full board.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Campbell. We have a second. Second by Ms. Acevedo. No other questions? Okay, please cast your vote.
Motion passed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We do
Sorry,
need a
sorry.
roll call.
Roll call
Thank you.
vote. Take that back. Roll call vote. Ms. Bocek?
Okay, Mrs. Acevedo, yay. Mr. Campbell,
Yay.
Mrs. DeFata,
Yes.
Mr. Egan,
4.
Mrs. Dysart. 4. Dr. Kraft,
Yes.
Dr. Lewis,
4.
Mr. Long,
4.
Mr. Nikosha,
4.
Mr. Warner.
4.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez, and thank you, Ms. Wojcik. Okay, moving on now to item number 12, request permission to solicit proposals for substitute management services. Is this also you, Mr.?
It appears so.
Okay. Proceed, sir.
Okay, what we're requesting is permission to solicit proposals from different Services that offer substitute management services. As you know, with the new Affordable Care Act, we are required, or many businesses are required to offer health care coverage to people that are working for them, not necessarily even in a full-time capacity. What it requires is that anybody that works for a business more than 30 hours a week on average is required to be offered health care. And all of our full-time employees are offered health care through the group insurance plan that we have. But when it comes to substitutes, they usually work less hours than 30, and they're not offered that. They work on a day-to-day basis. However, we are required now, or we will be required in the future, to track every person that works for us, their time, how many hours they're working in a week, and we're required to report that to the Internal Revenue Service.
That's for our substitute teachers.
That's for everybody.
Every substitute cafeteria workers, bus
Substitute,
drivers.
part-time people, everyone that comes and
Everybody who
works that gets
substitutes.
paid. We're going to have to keep track of this and report it on, they haven't come up with final rules, but we're going to have to report it periodically to the Internal Revenue Service, and then they're going to check to see who falls into this category of working over 30 hours a week. And then we're going to have to prove that we offered health care coverage, to all, affordable health care coverage to all of those people that meet that criteria. And currently, we don't have a system in place that's able to do that for substitutes. Our current practice is for the schools calling the substitutes, you know, and they work the hours, and at the end of the month, we'll get all the time in and pay the people accordingly. So it's getting to the point where we would like to contact one of these services, or some of these services, and see what they have to offer in terms of systems for keeping track. Over the state, a lot of school systems are moving to such services and are very happy with them. They'll manage the substitutes, make sure that they don't go over whatever level we have set for substitutes to work, and they will give us reports and data on how much time they work so that we can forward it to the IRS. So we'd like to call some of these services in, request some proposals to offer these services to us, and see if it's something that meets with our needs at this time.
Are you aware of any systems at the time that have this in place?
Most school systems either have already moved to that or are in the process of moving. Because what happens on a day-to-day basis, you may have, if, say, teachers call in sick in the morning, or other workers, or whatever they be, call in sick in the morning, well, you're scrambling to get substitutes. Well, one elementary school doesn't know what the other one is calling, nor what the high school's calling, or the maintenance department. And if trying to maintain the level at which they can work, the principal of one school really doesn't know how long that person has worked at another school. So we need to have a tracking system that is district-wide, which then means we can't have someone sitting there phoning and calling or emailing people to say, can you go sub at such and such a school and get there for 6:30? Can you sub and get there for 7 o'clock? So what these management services have done in other school systems, who are thrilled with it now, because especially our school secretaries who start calling sometimes at 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, saying, can you come sub at such and such a school? I just got a call. It's all computerized. We still approve who the subs are. We can. You know, they do have a substitute bank from which to draw. A lot of it is done if teachers or other employees know they're going to be out ahead of time. They notify us, and, you know, emails are sent or contacts are made. They could be making contacts. You know, they might post it at midnight. They might post it at 3 a.m. They might post it at whatever. And what they're telling us, and what some of the other school systems are telling us, is that they have a 90-some-odd% satisfaction rate with it. So what we want to do is look into it and get ahead of the game so that we can at least, if we feel that it is the way for us to go, to get that in place prior to any of these reporting requirements being put in, so that we're not playing catch-up, so that we'll have a system in place. And I think the people who will be substituting for us will like it a lot too, because they can choose their assignments as well. You know, schools still can have interaction with people, you know. Ms. Voce is going to be out next week, you know. We really want you to come in. We can still put those preferences in. That's not going to be a problem. And I think it'll be a much more manageable system for us so that we don't get ourselves in a legal hassle to where we're allowing people to substitute more than we are allowed by law to do.
I remember those substitute situations because way back in the day when Mr. Boackle was principal of Milledon, I would sub at Milledon, so I would get those calls at 6:30 in the morning saying, can you come in today and sub for Miss so-and-so?
Mm-hmm.
And it is difficult for the schools to do. So, right, so okay.
And see, a lot of times substitutes can put on there when they know they're going to be available.
Mhm.
Or I can be available, you know, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So nobody's going to then call them on Wednesday or Friday because they know they're not available. So it all works out to the benefit of both sides. They can say that, you know, they can put out there what their availability is, and then schools then can request those people as well.
I've got a
Thank you.
question.
Yes, Mr. Long.
Well, let's see. So the purpose of these management teams is really to keep us from having substitutes work longer than 30 hours?
Well, that's going to be one of the purposes.
Okay.
These companies have been in effect even before anything was talked about with the Affordable Health Care Act.
Mm-hmm.
This is just pushing us, I think, to consider it a little bit more seriously.
Okay.
Because many school systems do it already. It's less stress on their staff, so that
Mhm.
you don't have secretaries calling all morning, or teachers saying, oh, and my child got sick maybe overnight, so I'm going to try to get up and make sure I make that call at 5 or 5:30 to the secretary so that she can get a replacement. So all of that can be handled without all of those phone calls from the employees going back and forth.
So it would if we would have quite a few that do work over the 30 hours, we'd have to offer them health insurance, and
That would be one of
and
the...
it would be a cost
It would be a
factor to
tremendous
us.
cost, yes.
Right.
And really, it's, you know, we take care of, we have very good health insurance for all of our employees. And I don't want to minimize services or substitutes, but substitutes are coming in on a day-by-day basis just to cover when someone is out. So we do have to manage that situation to make sure that we don't have another entire body of individuals who might be eligible for additional increased benefits on the plan.
Right, and I would imagine that most people that do work, substitute work, would probably not be looking for health insurance. Otherwise, they would probably go to work full-time.
They would look for full-time employment, I
Right.
would think.
Right.
You know, and some substitutes do that to kind of see if they would like possibly to come in and apply for jobs as paraprofessionals, or to
Right.
then become permanent employees, and that gives them an opportunity to try it out, gives us an opportunity to see how they do as well. So it's beneficial in both ways.
Okay, thank you.
That's Mr. Long. Okay, Dr. Lewis.
Just have a comment. Currently, I'm using a substitute management system. We're very satisfied with it. Just as Ms. Voce said, you know, looking at the number of hours. Also, we have retired teachers who are substituting, and you know they only can make a certain percentage, and so these management systems, they know when they have reached their cap, and so it has worked really, really well for us. For a particular substitute teacher at a school, at a particular school, doesn't work out well, and so we're able to say that for this particular principal, this sub should not be called for our school, but they work well for the other schools in the district. And so it really, it was in place before I actually arrived there, but it works really, really well for us. My only thing that I had to deal with was those individuals that we have as substitutes that we are interested in possibly hiring as a paraprofessional or even a teacher. There's a waiting period, and so if you want to hire that person, the company we have, you have to pay a penalty to hire that person within a 90-day period. and things like that. So just as the district move forward to pay attention to that, because I know that's one thing that we're dealing with in my district.
That's good.
Thank you for that heads up, Dr. Lewis. That's something we can look at as we evaluate the companies. Any other comments or questions for anyone? Okay. And we would need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Kraft. Second by Mr. Long.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Dysart.
Mr. Fernandez, do you have an estimate on what a service like this would cost? I know this motion's to solicit.
Not at this time. I'm sure it's going to be based on number of employees, number of substitutes, things like that. That's why we're requesting permission to contact these companies so we can get a feel for how much it would cost.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Having a motion by Dr. Kraft and a second by Mr. Long, please vote your machines.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay. Going on to item 13, request permission to renew fiscal agency agreement with Capital One Bank and Gulf Coast Bank for the period of July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2017. All right, take it away, Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you. Okay, every school district is required to appoint a fiscal agent to handle their bank accounts, things of that nature. We are currently have an agreement with two banks, Capital One Bank and Gulf Coast Bank and Trust, to act as our fiscal agents. Well, the current agreement we have with them expires at the end of this year, June 30th. We are requesting that we renew those agreements for an additional 3-year period with both banks through the end of 2017 school year. We're very happy with the relationship we have with both banks. It served us well. It's worked well for us, and that's why we'd like to renew, and we're renewing at the current terms that exist. They're not increasing any fees or anything. They're renewing at the same level that we currently have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Egan, you have a question?
I just have one question. Of course, it's going to be the same fees as and everything. They'll give it the same services they have been rendering.
Yes, sir. Same services. Actually, they charge us no fees.
No fees.
Okay.
They're going to keep the same interest rate. I mean, the interest rates that they're paying us currently, provide all the same services that currently, the exact same thing that they're doing for us now.
Well, that's it. You answered my question. If it's the same as exactly as the other ones, then I have no further questions.
Mr. Long and then Dr. Kraft.
I was going to make a motion that we approve the recommendation.
Okay. Dr. Kraft. Do you have any questions, Dr. Kraft, or you just for doing that? Okay. Just one question, Mr. Fernandez. I know you're saying, suggesting that we renew for the next 3 years because everything's going to be the same. Are we required to put out a bid for this, or we can just go ahead?
No, ma'am. Districts less than $100,000 in population can
just renew.
Just renew. You know, they're not required to go through a bid process.
Just wanted to check.
And every time we did the bid process in the bank in the past,
it's always
it's been these two entities responding. So I think if we even went through the formal bid process, we'd end up with the same two.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't have to do that extra little step.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Long and a second by Dr. Kraft. Being no more comments or questions, please vote your machine.
Motion passes 9-4. Mr. Warner abstains.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving on to item 14, request permission to advertise for special education buses. Mr. Halton, you giving Mr. Fernandez a break?
Good evening. Yes.
Good evening.
We are requesting permission to advertise the bids for the purchase of 2 special needs lift buses. The current number of pupils, special needs students, and the anticipated increase necessitates that we add to the fleet. Dr. Gonzalez is here, and she can go into the details of why we need them and answer any questions y'all may have.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Gonzalez, would you like to say anything, or
I don't know if you have any questions about.
does anyone have
Why?
any questions? No?
Okay.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the need, because we
Okay.
do have many additional students who are physically disabled.
Yeah, we, at this moment, we are transporting 75 special education students. That's among all the schools. And 3 are graduating this year. And of the 75 students, 14 of them need the lift bus because they're in wheelchairs. And 1 student's graduating who uses the lift bus with a wheelchair. So we still will have 13 students next year that need to be picked up with the lift bus, for the wheelchairs. And this year we have the 3-year-old program, and that program has 12 students in it, and some of those students will remain in the program dependent on when they became 3. And some will move into the 4-year-old program, and they'll be in a regular route set for us. Well, of those 12, right now, 4 of those children that we pick up are in wheelchairs, and one of the parents transports their child, but at any time we may be called upon to do that. And one of the children is waiting for a wheelchair to be able to be transported on the bus, on the lift bus. So our numbers are growing, and we're just trying to stay ahead a little bit because and we also transport when somebody breaks a leg and they can't get up the steps of the bus. We use every school has a transport chair, and we let them. We use the transport chair for them to get onto the lift with the transport chair to get into the bus, and then to get into a seat, and then to get back on that chair to get on the lift and go back out of the bus. And that can happen at any time that we're called upon. And we have a few broken legs every year, among the schools. Okay, so we're just trying to be ahead right now. We have 1 spare lift bus, and it's a 98 bus. It still runs good, the lift still works good, and we're still keeping that bus because it's still a reliable spare, but we'd like to have an additional spare. We had an incident a couple weeks ago where 2 of the buses were out of commission, and we had to go and pick up a part in Hammond to put on the bus. Otherwise, we were not going to be able to get children to and from school in a timely manner. We would have had a lot of late children ride the lift bus because we absolutely had no more buses to use. So we want to just be real proactive and try to stay ahead. As you know, this process takes a long time, to advertise, and then the first attempt is for used buses, and then if that doesn't pan out, then it'll be for new buses, and the process to advertise and and then if it ends up being a new bus, to build the bus. We're talking into next school year before we even see the bus. So we would figure out how to rearrange ourselves to try to make it to that point, like we're doing right now.
Okay. All right. Is there a limit of students that can be placed on one of these buses?
In a way, we do have a limit, and the limit is we're getting our buses now with the tracks in the whole bus, so that we can take all the seats out of the bus except just a couple seats for people like the bus rider, or if we had a couple of students who don't use the wheelchair, that they can be in the bus. The problem is we don't want to have students on the bus that long, where it takes several minutes to go to a stop, to put the lift down, someone to get out of the bus, put the lift down, put the child on the lift, secure the chair, then raise the lift, and then once the chair is in the bus, take it off the lift and go into where the securement straps are, secure the wheelchair. Then go back out, put the lift up, and move on. Go to the next stop and repeat the same thing. So the real limit is not so much how many people we can fit in the bus, but it's how long do we want them to be on the bus.
Okay.
So we try not to have people on the bus for extremely long periods of time.
And this addition would give us, would that give us an additional spare bus also in case we had some
It would.
trouble?
Potentially, and I don't know if it's for certain yet, but potentially, we may need to add another special ed driver, potentially. Right now, we wouldn't have a lift bus to put that person in because the only thing we would have is the spare bus. If we actually did need to add another person. To ask for 2 buses would mean that the next person coming in would have a lift bus, and we would still then have another lift bus plus the 98 bus. We would actually have 2 spare lift buses, which would be really good. Now, there are occasions, like right now at this moment, we have one driver who happens not to have any children in wheelchairs, but that's like at the moment. Okay, we took that bus from her and we gave it to a sub-driver. We called in one of our retirees to come back and drive the 3-year-olds because we couldn't get to school on time because we're just so like tight time constraints.
Right.
And she is driving the 3-year-olds to and from school, assisting with driving. We still have others doing it too, but she's assisting for them to be able to get to school on time. We didn't have another bus except the spare bus, but then that would give us nothing. So she's actually using the driver's bus, who at the moment doesn't have the need for a lift. But we've done it both ways before. You know, in previous years, we had I assigned some drivers to lift buses and some drivers just to regular buses. And the problem was if a student in their school needed a lift, then a driver from another school had to go to that school because they weren't in a lift bus. So it became extremely problematic because they couldn't pick up all of the students in their own school districts, their areas. So now everybody has a lift bus, no matter what the situation. And right now, you know, 4 out of the 5 drivers need the lift bus, and then we have the additional retiree that's driving a lift bus for the 3-year-olds. So we're just trying to be a step ahead because it's a long process to get another bus. And we're just trying to stay a step ahead because the alternative is if we run out of lift buses, we would be looking at students late every day or the need to lease a bus until we could get it resolved to get another bus.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez.
You're welcome.
Mr. Long?
Dr. Gonzalez, well, you answered one of my questions about the spare buses. The other thing is, a while back you may have heard about that Thomasville bus that was that had caught fire. Thank God the children it was in another state, but the children were able to get out. And I'm sure they've done an investigation on that Thomasville bus because you know, to find out the cause of it. I was just wondering, does the Thomasville people, will they put out some type of press release or something, letting school systems know what was the problem with that particular bus? Because I know probably some of our fleet is Thomasville. Is that correct?
Well, it's the Thomas Company, and most of our fleet is Thomas.
Okay.
A few Bluebirds, but most of them are Thomas buses. We get several school fleet, bus fleet magazines, and I read the journals, and I attend the conferences, and I go to the in-services, and so we learn about, and I do the Google searches, and I look for information because every week we do a reminder of the week, and it's something about safety. We have been real fortunate. I can say our entire fleet is with diesel engines, and the flash point of diesel is much better than the flash point for gasoline. So I'm sure that that's a significant help to us if we would have any accidents. Additionally, the way the buses are built, they come under the Federal Motor Carrier Standards Association, Safety Administration. And we have federal regulations that say how the bus has to be built, and they're built like tanks. And the fuel tanks are very well protected underneath the back, under the bus. If you run into the back of the bus, you're not going to run in and hit the fuel tank right away. So they're built. When we have minor accidents, it's possible for a bus driver to hit a vehicle, and no one on the bus even knows that there's been an accident because you don't even feel it, because they're built, rollover protection. If a bus turns over, the top of the bus is not going to cave in on anybody. So they're built, to be extremely safe, and so I would think, and they're not all diesel engines. Ours are, but and I'm not sure with the one with the fire that they would have had, what engine they would have had. I'm not sure.
Right. But just like any accident, whether it's through the airlines or buses and things, I think everyone learns from previous accidents, and and hopefully they make any corrections to the buses that might have been a problem. But I would like us to at least look into that and make sure we know exactly what happened to that Thomasville bus, especially since most of our buses are Thomasville.
Yeah, well, the National Transportation Safety Board comes to investigate those accidents, and they do put their findings out under their website.
Okay, great.
So, but it takes them a long time before,
Right.
they submit those things, because so many different agencies come together to learn about the different aspects of what happened, because they're not just looking for how the accident happened, they're also looking for how to prevent it from ever happening again.
Exactly.
And I mean, just to give you an example, the Mother's Day accident some years ago where the 24 ladies on the charter bus died, well, as a result of that, one of the outcomes of that accident was that the driver should never have been driving. He wasn't physically fit, yet he had just been cleared by a physician to be fit to drive the bus. And when a liability was given out, part of it was given out to the doctor who had just cleared him to be able to drive. Well, part of the outcome of that is, starting this month, right now, every person who goes for a CDL physical has to go to somebody who's in the National Register. And the National Register, all the people on that registry had to go get trained and pass a test. And the company that we use, it's Prime Occupational that we use for our CDL physicals, the person who does the physicals is, registered in that registry. And that's to make sure that everybody who does a CDL physical actually knows how to do them so that nothing like this would ever happen again. So things are coming from it. Now there's a national system. It used to be that you could lose a CDL in one state and go to another and get a CDL from another state. Now it's a national registry, and all the states had to get on board with it, where everybody with a CDL is in the computer now, and if you get stopped in any state, they can bring it up. It's in everybody's name is in the registry. They can see if you're current on your license, if you're current on your CDL physical. In Louisiana, school bus drivers have to have a CDL, get their physical every year. For everybody else, it's every 2 years, but in Louisiana, for the Transportation Bulletin requires it to be every year. And it's all in the computer now. They can bring it up. And that's all new. That never used to be before. But time something happens, they look at how it can be safer. At one time in life, there weren't crossing arms in the front of the bus, but children were being rolled over. Now the crossing arm forces people to walk further out in front of the bus instead of right in front of the bumper.
Right.
Okay, I can tell you that if we buy new buses today, the seats are 4 inches higher than the current ones right now, because it's been determined that the taller children would have whiplash with their necks going back. The new buses of today, the seats are 4 inches higher than what they used to be, than anything we have right now. So it's constant. Every year, some new safety things are going into effect every year. And it's based upon past accidents, and not just how it happened, but what can be done for it to be safer for the future. And so that's why the NTSB takes so long before they do come out with their findings.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Dr. Lewis.
Like the motion, send to the full board as a recommendation.
We have a motion by Dr. Lewis, second by Mr. Nicosia. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for that information. We appreciate it, and you too, Mr. Halton. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote your machines.
Motion passes 10-0.
And now we turn it back over to you, Dr. Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Vada. We'll have Superintendent Bocce to give us some information and recommendations.
Okay, at the beginning of our regular board meeting on May 27th, we will have the public hearing on the proposed 2014-15 general fund and special revenue funds budgets. So anyone from the community can come to make comments or ask questions at that time. We'll also have the recognition of our academic games participants who have returned, and I'll just say we have one national champion. So it's going to be a very happy group of young people who I think did extremely well representing us. So we're going to bring them in at the regular meeting. And as the end of the year approaches, if y'all have opportunities to go to any of the ceremonies and banquets and awards and such, I know you've gotten school calendars, and I'm sure the children would appreciate the attendance of everyone who they feel is important to them and their families.
Thank you, Superintendent Bocce. Anyone else has any questions or anything to add before I call for an adjournment? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Campbell, Ms. Acevedo, motion and second. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Have a great night.